We are going to be discussing building resilience and community in the CMT community. We have two very special presenters for this. We have Lily Sander. She is our 2025 MDA National Ambassador. And then after Lily, we will have Estela Lugo. She's the Program Development Manager with HNF. And we're so grateful that both of them can be here to present with us today. So hi, Lily. So good to see you.
Hello, everyone. I am so honored to be here and to be speaking to all of you about one of my favorite subjects. CMT is something obviously so personal to me. I live with CMT type 1E and HNPP. So it's a very rare combination. So that adds a whole other layer to it. But CMT as a whole has informed every part of my life. So I want to talk about my story and how it led me to MDA and ultimately our subject of support systems. So I was diagnosed with CMT at about age 4. After a year of not being able to walk properly, my feet turned in and I was diagnosed with club feet. But we couldn't find an answer until we finally were referred to MDA Care Center in Charlotte. And we were told to fly to Iowa to another care center, and that's where I got diagnosed. So my journey started with MDA, and I immediately was thrown into the community through summer camp and fundraising and speaking to donors and patients. And that's when my life completely changed. I saw kids with disabilities that looked like me, and they understood everything that I was going through, even if I didn't have the language to verbalize it at the time. But camp really helped me understand what it means to be disabled in our society and how I can connect with other disabled people. What I was experiencing at camp was disabled joy, something I wasn't able to put that label onto, but something that I talk about frequently now. Disabled joy to me is the elation that I feel when I'm with other disabled people, and every part of my being feels deeply understood. So I like to say we don't have to spend time explaining and translating our daily experiences. Other people just get it. So MDA has been vital to my building of my support system initially through camp and the friendships that I've been able to make there and maintain throughout the years, but also through the ambassador program. I have met many ambassadors who have inspired me and driven me to do this work. And that's where I experience a lot of the disabled joy that I've talked about. Other things that help build my support system are, believe it or not, Facebook groups. Joining CMT and MD Facebook groups where people share their experiences and candidly and honestly ask for advice. And also, connection has been extremely helpful to have this resource where I can read through people's posts. I can comment and reply and have connection with other people with CMT and MD has been vital. Also, social media has amazing representation of people with different disabilities. So, following people that look like me has been very important for my well-being to see myself represented on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, like I've talked about. So, even though that's less of a support system, I've been able to connect with creators so we can have that human to human interaction about disability. Another thing has been attending conferences, especially through MDA, where patients are around and we're able to connect about disability, but also, about anything else. being able to connect about this part of my identity, but also being able to be seen as a complete and whole person that is multifaceted and complex has been so important. And I like to talk a lot about the physical connection when you're physically in a room with someone. Virtual connections are awesome. Obviously, I believe in them. I'm here, and resources like these are so valuable. But there's just something in the air when I'm in the same room with a bunch of disabled people, and I can just feel the joy and the persistence and resilience that we all share. So there's also other organizations that we can turn to. I believe that every organization has a part to play on the stage of cure advancement and patient support. So a quick Google search will lead you to more CMT specific organizations. But for me, home is with MDA, and I love how MDA combines research, advocacy, patient support, and so many other things. So I encourage you to do research, and I'm so glad that we have a resource like Google and Facebook to help find connections in the broader community. Some things that I'd like to highlight with connection. Obviously, I talked about camp. That has been a big thing for my support system, but also the network of advocacy that MDA facilitates, especially through MDA on the Hill, has been incredible. So basically, a bunch of people with neuromuscular disease gather in Washington, D.C., and we learn about bills that would help advance our lives as disabled Americans. And then the next day, we go out and we talk to our lawmakers and we try to get these bills passed and we share our stories. And it's incredibly powerful to have people sharing their stories and using their experiences to make a positive change for our community. So the importance of sharing your story is incredibly valuable for connection, but also to spark change. So if you are just getting started in the CMT space, in the MD space, whether you were diagnosed recently or maybe you were diagnosed and it's totally normal to take time to process that before you jump right in. Either is okay. You are in the right place. I am so glad to have you all here to learn about just the patient perspective and the science, and to have this kind of connection with other people who know what you're going through. So I encourage you to keep these connections, contact each other and build these relationships, because relationships with other people with MD have just changed my perspective. I have many friends that I keep in contact with that have CMT or other forms of muscular dystrophy, and I'm able to really see the beauty of our community. And also, I'm able to share experiences and worries and ask questions and really connect on what we have in common. So that is my biggest piece of advice. Make connections online, in person, in whatever way that you can, because that has truly been the most valuable part of my journey of acceptance and now doing this work. So thank you guys again for having me. I am so glad to be here with you all. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lily. So well spoken. We'll now move over to Estela.
Thank you so much. That was incredible, Lily. I'm always so empowered when I hear you speak, and I just wanted to say thank you for that, and a special thank you for the MDA for having the hereditary neuropathy and partnering with us, the foundation today for this series. It's been definitely a full circle moment, especially talking about this topic of resilience, because sometimes it's a word that we hear a lot of and we maybe we get comments from people, oh, you're so brave, you're so strong. But at the end of the day, what does that really mean? And how do we build that muscle within ourselves and within our community? So today I'm going to be talking a little bit, very much like Lily, a little bit about my story, what I've learned over the years about resilience, about living with CMT, about all of the incredible gifts that it also brings into our lives, as much of the struggles, but also many of the gifts. And I wanted to start with a slide here, which is a picture of my sister and I back in the day, kind of trying to have a Madonna moment at the beach there. But that she has been my ride or die from the very beginning. We both have CMT4A, so we have been each other's community from day one. And very much like Lily, my journey has started with the MDA as well. Back in the 1900s, 1987, our family was selected to be MDA ambassadors, child ambassadors. Back then, they called us poster children. And this was back in the day with the Jerry Lewis Telethon and all of the incredible campaigns. And very much like Lily, I attended MDA camp, and that was absolutely transformative to my self-identity and identifying as somebody with a disability and forming those crucial friendships from the very beginning. So I want to again just really give MDA just my warmest gratitude for helping to facilitate that for myself, my sister at such a young age, because it really changed the trajectory of our lives and created advocates at a very young age. So I would love to make this as interactive as possible today. So I'm going to open up my chat here, and I would love to hear some of your answers as we go along for a few of these slides. What is your definition of resilience? I know it means different things to different people, but feel free to drop in the chat what resilience means to you. But while we're waiting, I wanted to share kind of the dictionary version of what resilience is. If we look it up, it says resilience is the ability to be happy, successful, and successful again after something difficult or bad has happened. It's the ability of a substance to return to its usual shape after being bent, stretched, or pressed. So that's kind of the dictionary version of it. But I think all of us have our own definition of what resilience really is. Someone here in the comments mentioned the ability to adapt, and I couldn't agree more with that. And definitely living with CMT gives us no choice but to adapt, right, to the constant changes, to the changes in our bodies, the changes of our abilities, of our lifestyles, so much change all of the time. Someone else mentioned here the ability to keep going through problems. Yes. So I wanted to start by sharing my credentials. I am none of these things here, but I do have a PhD in falling, which I like to say. And I know many people here can relate to this. That CMT is hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it is, every day we feel empowered and motivated to adapt to what CMT gives us. But it does teach us so many important lessons throughout the years. And for me, it's been 4 decades of falling. And I challenged myself one year to count the amount of times I fell. And so I like to say I fall an average of 64 times a year. And thankfully, I get up about 65 of those times. So CMT, whether that's physical falling or emotionally falling, or however you design that, it's something that also shapes us. And I see a few people here chatting in. Someone says they have a master's in gravity checks. Yes. Same here. Someone also mentioned 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and restarting over and over again. Absolutely. So I like to place resilience in the middle of this Venn diagram here. There's physical resilience, right? And then there's emotional resilience. And somewhere in the middle is where, if we can learn to balance those, no pun intended, that's really when we find our sweet spot. And it doesn't mean that we don't fall. It just means that we get a more clear roadmap to how to get ourselves back up off the floor when we do fall. So when we think about like the physical fall risks of someone living with CMT, what does that look like for us? Maybe that's carrying heavy objects. Maybe that depends on our energy level. Maybe that's a rocky terrain or some trip hazards or a slippery surface, or maybe we're distracted. Those are all kind of things that can be part of or give us a risk of falling physically. But oftentimes we don't really think about what are the emotional fall risks of living with CMT. And maybe what are some of the heavy emotions that we carry with ourselves on a day-to-day basis that maybe we're not aware of consciously. Sometimes those look like things like blurred boundaries, maybe unhealthy, toxic relationships, hidden triggers. Maybe we were bullied a lot when we were a kid, and that kind of left an imprint on us. Unhealthy habits. What do our lifestyles look like? People pleasing, right? Trying to keep up with others that are able-bodied or not living with CMT, and we're constantly comparing ourselves to them. So all of those things can play a part in emotional fall risks. And so let's talk a little bit about what those heavy emotions can look like. And feel free to add some of them in the chat if there's any of those emotions that you can think of. But the risk of carrying all of this emotional baggage and weight is that we can burn out at times, right? Maybe we don't realize how much we're carrying until we hit that bump in the road, whether that's, something happens in our family or relationship or job, and we just kind of feel burnt out. And so we really want to be as mindful as possible of what those emotional baggage can look like. And one of the tools that I've used personally is something called the Hawkins scale. And it's this full picture of the weight of emotions, right? So when we think of some of the heaviest emotions that all of us as human beings can carry, whether or not you have CMT or disability, you can find at them at the bottom of this chart. So things like shame. Many of us unfortunately carry shame around our disability, even though it's not something that we have any control over, but maybe we feel shame about a mobility device or not being able to keep up or do things like others are doing. Maybe we feel guilty, right? Guilty for saying no, guilty for passing the gene on when we didn't realize, or grief. There's a lot of grief with CMT, things that we used to be able to do that we no longer can, fear of the future, what's going to happen. So all of these things can really weigh us down. So I really love this visual of just the scale of emotions and how, it helps me think about whenever I'm feeling any of these and I feel like they're weighing me down, what are some things that I can pull from the top portion of this chart that'll kind of balance me out, right? Doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel these emotions, but they're going to kind of counterbalance the things that I'm feeling. So things like courage and pride and even anger sometimes can kind of boost you out of that depression or that dark place. And it boosts you into a place of desire and that different mentality. So we're going to go over a little bit more of how I kind of help boost myself and unpack some of these heavy emotions. Again, these are some of the top heaviest emotions, and it's good to take like a self-assessment. Which ones of these do I feel like weigh me down the most? And you can feel free to share them in the chat. Someone shared that they have anxiety attacks or, they feel uncertain if they're standing or stepping on something unstable. I totally can relate to that. Absolutely. So, just taking a moment to assess that and to really acknowledge how much more as CMT patients we carry around on a daily basis, and give yourself grace. We are carrying a lot around us, and we should honor that as well. So, let's look at ourselves and think about ways that we can start tossing out some of the heavier emotions like shame. Are we body shaming ourselves? Right? Are we listening to other people's opinions of us? Are we comparing ourselves? Are we coming down on ourselves because we don't do enough, whether that's physically or emotionally? Do we feel like we have to do things alone all the time? Do we have imposter syndrome? All of these things start to add up. And so we want to start assessing those, identifying them when they come up in our minds, and then, also taking note of the healthy things in our lives that we are doing well and that we have control over. Things like healthy relationships, things like, if, helping somebody or having people help us around things around the home. Our career, can things like our career bring joy and fulfillment, health and fitness, hobbies, activities, things that we can learn and goals that we can set for ourselves. Someone shared here, yes, I feel like I need to do it all before I no longer can, and I'm in my 40s. I can absolutely relate to that feeling of, especially as a mom, there's so many things that are on our plate and we feel like we have to do it all. But at the end of the day, there are ways to kind of recalibrate and prioritize the things that align with our wellness and also for just being able to manage day-to-day CMT challenges. So again, these are some of the things like we want to toss out guilt, guilt about past decisions, our emotions, perfectionism, doing things that we don't enjoy. How many of us say things to, yes to things that are not really aligned with our joy? Like Lily spoke about disabled joy. Um, Thinking about things that really bring joy to our lives and being more mindful of saying no to the things that don't. And a lot of times we prioritize others before ourselves. So we want to take note of that. Where can I prioritize myself better? Having clear goals is a really good way to kind of help align our, before I say yes to something, I like to think, is this aligned with my goals? Is this aligned with my well-being? Do I have the energy? Do I want to give my energy to this? Grief, right? Grief is something that can be really hard. And I think the more we can share that with each other and to talk out loud and share it, whether it's Facebook groups or friends that can really understand us and hold space for us, that is something that can really help lift that weight. And fear, worrying about, is whenever we feel that fear creeping up, how can I be an advocate? How can I advocate for myself if I'm feeling fearful? So, for example, someone spoke about walking on uneven surfaces. So, can I use a mobility device to help alleviate that fear? Can I use maybe a cane or AFOs or a walker? Can I call ahead and make sure that it's accessible? All of these things can kind of start to take the load off of that heavy emotion of fear. And also thinking back to all of the times in our lives where we were uncertain and we were fearful about something and we made it through, right? We figured it out. And that's one of the skills that we build as people living with CMTs is that we adapt, we grow this muscle that is not atrophying, this muscle that is always growing. And that's the muscle that it takes to adapt. And so when we do have these falls, it's hard, right? And as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm personally recovering from a really bad fall I had about 5 weeks ago. and I sprained my ankle really, really bad. And it's taken me a while to start walking a little bit again and just giving myself that grace. And so we need to take those moments, as difficult as they are, to just recenter ourselves and think about the things that we would say to a friend or a loved one when they are having a setback or when they are going through a rough time. So I'd love for, our attendees today, if somebody is going through a hard time in your life, somebody's living with a disability or chronic illness or some kind of challenge in their life, what are some of the things that you would say to encourage them? Feel free to share them in the chat. I know for me, I try to be as empathetic as possible, even if I don't know exactly what they're going through. I can try and relate it to things that I've struggled with in my life, and just be a listening ear and ask them to share with me more and not to try and sugarcoat them or tell them it's going to be okay. Um, yeah, someone said here, never give up and get stronger. There's so many things that we say to others, but oftentimes we don't say them to ourselves when we're struggling. Keep on keeping on. Yes, I love that, Krista. So again, how do we speak to other people, and let's strengthen that inner voice to ourselves when we are going through some difficult times. Also, when we're down and out, because it does happen, um, it's a time to reflect on what is your reason for getting back up. And feel free to share that in the chat. I know for me, my reason for getting back up is my family. It's my loved ones. It's my children. It is my partner. And many, many times, the top of that list is the CMT community and the work that I do with H&F. And, there's so much important work that is being done right now in the space. And there are so many families relying on the hard work that collectively we are all doing, that is what gets me up every day. And so I encourage people to find whatever it is in their life, if they haven't already, to find what it is that gets them back up when they are having those rough times. And oftentimes that will help carry them through those moments. And it's really about reconnecting with our presence, right? When we literally fall on the floor, the first thing that we have to do is just take a deep breath, make sure we're okay. If no one's around, sometimes we have to find the nearest thing that we can pull ourselves up off the floor from. Maybe that's a chair, maybe that's a counter, whatever that is. But emotionally, what is that for you? And I think it's a time to really think about, to avoid falling down into that dark place. Sometimes for me, that is just knowing that, okay, this is a moment, this is tough, but I will make it through. I've made it through very hard moments before, and I will get through this one as well. So just taking a moment to be present. And what are the things that ground you, right? So that's metaphorically, that's physically. What are the things that just bring your nervous system back to a place where you can just reconnect with yourself, right? And tap into that voice that is able to let you know that things are going to be okay. Sometimes that's getting creative. For me, I'm creative at my core. So that's creating artwork or listening to beautiful music. Sometimes that's just getting on a yoga mat and just doing some very grounded yoga moves and practices, meditative breathing. Sometimes that's a phone call with my sister. Sometimes I'm crying to my friends. Sometimes I'm laughing. Maybe it's just a movie that makes you feel good. Maybe it's connecting with nature. I love to stand outside on my deck every day with 15 minutes with my coffee and just breathe in some air and just have a moment of gratitude for all the things that I do have. Faith is another beautiful thing to reconnect. Mantras, yes, I've crawled around me Someone say, I've crawled around my entire house on bad days, and we move through the pain. Yes. So just finding those things, and maybe it's making a list, because sometimes in those dark moments we forget. But really reconnecting with what grounds us. And what that does is it connects us to our core, right? It helps us find our center. It helps kind of cancel out the noise around us. It puts that to-do list to the side, because we all have that to-do list that we think that is so important. But at the end of the day, it comes back to our priorities, our health, our family, our friends, the things that really matter. And we go back to the basics. Someone here mentioned that gaming with other people really helps them, and the chat can get really crazy, I'm sure. That sounds like a lot of fun. Faith in God. Someone says music grounds me. Absolutely. I love these answers. And it's not just about what grounds you, it's who, right? Who do we lean on in these times? So just like we lean on mobility devices when our muscles are atrophy or we need that extra balance, who do we lean on in our life? And it's like Lily was talking about, having that community is vital. It is vital to our well-being. We can learn so much from each other, and we can help each other. Even if you're having a bad day, there's always something that you can share with someone else to make their life better. And that is medicine for ourselves. That is a two-way street that I find is incredibly helpful. So as we move, right, we're connecting to people who we find maybe that they're courageous, that we are proud to be around. They give us a sense of pride. Um, they help give us a sense of acceptance. They help us feel productive. They help us feel creative. They help us feel at ease. And if we can start lifting ourselves on that emotional scale, we can get ourselves to a place faster that doesn't feel so heavy, and that doesn't make us so high risk for falling emotionally and physically. So this is, a great time to share in the chat as well with each other. Who are your teachers, your mentors, your support? And it doesn't just have to be for CMT. It doesn't just have to be for disability. There are so many people in this world that are struggling with things that many of us can never even imagine. And everybody has a story. And like Lily said, a lot of times when we are brave enough to share our own stories, to be vulnerable, we'll be completely surprised by people who start to show up in our lives and say, oh my God, I feel that way too. Or, I was feeling shameful about that until I saw a picture of you speaking openly and wearing your braces. And now I feel more confident. So you never know who's on the other end of sharing your stories. So I encourage everybody to find a way to share that story, whether it's, on social media or in their close relationships, to get more vulnerable and really share what's going on and your struggles. It doesn't make you weak. It actually takes an incredible amount of bravery to be vulnerable. Someone shared here in the comments that after a fall they feel very alone. Um, and sometimes people dismiss that, or they say, oh, you must have the same thing as me. I'm getting old, or I can relate to that because I broke my foot. And maybe you're like, no, maybe you can't. And so that's a good way to kind of reach out to CMC community and be like, has anyone experienced this? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. And so it's a great way to feel less alone and share that. And I want to share this video of just me going up the set of stairs a long time ago to show that um, this is something that back in the day I would have been very embarrassed for people to see. This is actually the staircase to my old middle school. And I used to be so scared of other kids seeing how much I struggle going up and down the stairs. There was a few times where I fell down the stairs at school, and that was just a real big trigger for me. And I want to show this just because we can get brave about the things that we are challenged with, and we can show ourselves to the world, and we can, I use this banister as a metaphor for finding emotional support so that we can get to the next level, right? Just like we use banisters and handrails to get us upstairs, we can use these systems of support and community to help hold us up when we need them. And so as we move up the scale, we get even higher. And this is where we find, I love this term that Lily mentioned, this disabled joy, right? It's not all the time, but the more we can be conscious of it, the easier we can get there, and the more time we can spend in this emotion of disabled joy. And at the top, if you see that, it's being in service. And I think that's why being part of the CMT community, being a full-time advocate now for 9 years, full-time with the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation, 15 years, another 8 years before that, volunteering, being a child ambassador for the MDA at such a young age, gives you the opportunity to be of service. And everyone, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing with, can be in service. No matter what your skills are, we can all be of service, whether that's for the CMT community or anything that we feel like we can bring value to. So for me, that has been one of my greatest sources of joy and when I'm with community, I fear less. I trust that I'll be okay because I see everyone around me. We're all supporting each other and we're gonna be okay. I feel compassionate, not only for others, but for myself. And we realize that we can influence others in a way that will empower them and we can influence others to support each other in a way that we wished we had at some point in our lives, whether that was as a child or just, in our day-to-day experience. So again, these are some of the top emotions that we can all have. So I'd love for anyone to share some of the things that help lift them up in their lives. And I want to share this funny quote that I saw or tweet back when it was Twitter, that it's important to schedule joy. I know it sounds silly, but when you think about it, we schedule everything else. So we schedule phone calls and meetings and our kids' sports and travel and all of these things. But it's also important to schedule joy. So whatever it is that is uplifting you, that you feel lighter, and you feel more supported, schedule more of that. And that's one of the shortcuts that I like to use, is to just make sure that joy is on your calendar as often as possible. So yeah, feel free to drop in the chat. What are some activities that you like to add to your calendar that help bring joy, love, and peace into your world? So now, this is an opportunity for all of us today as we move forward. How do we redefine resilience in our lives? What does that really mean to us? Not as just this nice word to throw around, but what does that really look like for us? Some people answered here in the chat, that's playing card games. I love that because that's community, that's laughter, that's fun, that's playing. Tess answered, Friday night movie night with my family. Yes, I love that. Being around other people, there's so much joy there. And then again, resilience is not just like trying to do it all by yourself, right? For me, that is not what resilience is. For me, resilience is the intersection of being a self-advocate for yourself to being resourceful to reaching out for help, and then also leaning on community and finding community and asking for help when you need it. So for me, that is really what resilience redefined for me is. And just like when we say, when we've fallen, there are ways that we can run after we've fallen. And for me, like, this is the physical metaphor for running after you've fallen. So yes, as a CMT patient, I cannot run with regular gravity. But many years ago, I found something called an Ultra G treadmill that, just like community, supports me and lifts me up in this bag and allows me to run. So this is not a plug for Ultra G treadmills, although they're incredible. I put the website right there. But I just want to show as an example that not to never say never, and to know that there are so many things that we can do to uplift ourselves, whether that's physically or emotionally when we're living with CMT. And now I want to go into some of the really fun resources that we have put together over many, many years at the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation to help uplift each other. One of those things, we put together a 30-day CMT self-care journal. So it's 30 days of all ideas on how to self-care when you're living with CMT. And then it kind of helps just give you prompts on things that we can all do to reflect on ways to take care of themselves. So that's available on Amazon. All the proceeds go back to CMT research. Another great resource that we've come up with is the CMT pain management guide. A lot of times, physical pain can be a huge barrier in helping uplift us with the emotional pain. So we don't want to write that off. And so we've put together this guide. I'll be sharing the link for anyone who experiences a lot of the physical pain as well. So that's something available for free on H&F website. Also, something that just kind of helps every day are adaptive products, right? Yes, as CMT patients, we adapt every day. We find ways to use kitchen tools, and I bite everything open with my mouth. Thankfully, I haven't broken any teeth yet. But we don't always have to do that. There are a lot of products out there that can make our lives easier, that can lighten the load, can lighten that backpack. So that's a free, we don't profit off of any of these products. We just collect them and we put them in a neat guide for everybody to use that has everything from adaptive shoes to tools and things like that. And when it comes to children, I think, again, I want to underscore the importance of supporting our children and our parents with resources to build resilient children with CMT, because it takes a village, right? And we have resources for school accommodations. We have webinars on how to support kids when they go off to college. And also we have some great webinars from a counselor and therapist who actually lives with cerebral palsy. She gave a great webinar on how to raise resilient children. We have authors who are living with CMT. Some of them are Charity Harris, Bernadette Scarduzio. And as you see here, we have a new CMT Readers program where we are putting together volunteers to read CMT-friendly books in classrooms when children are young, and there's still no stereotypes yet about kids with disabilities, and it's a great way to really introduce children to the idea of not being shamed about having CMT or any type of disability in for that matter. So that's a great resource as well. And again, Mitch mentioned our H&F Summit. This is a great opportunity to connect with other CMT families and individuals, parents, older people of all ages. And there's nothing like stepping into a room for the first time of like 100, 200 people living with CMT. And you just feel at home. You feel like you've known people for your entire lives after speaking with them for 5 minutes because they look like you, they walk like you, They have floppy hands when they shake your hands. And it's just such a energizing environment. And we love having this every year. So we hope you join us this year. And you could scan the code or visit the website just to join the wait list and to learn more about when the registration goes live. Again, our website is really a great place to connect with all of these resources, many that we have not covered today. So you can just go to our website to learn more. And just like Lily said, connect on social media, connect in person, um, connect with us. Our email is here for you to reach out with any questions that you have at any time. And thank you again to the MDA for hosting this powerful series. And I hope it brings value to all of you. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Estela. That was such an impactful webinar. And I just found myself sitting here feeling relaxed and feeling like I have more strategies for building that resilience in my own life. So thank you so much. I think that was just exactly what we needed to end this wonderful virtual learning series. I do have a few questions in the chat that I'd like to connect with you on. Does H&F have a support group for people who have CMT?
We do have several virtual online groups. A lot of the support groups are done in person from the summit. So I would definitely encourage you to email us and we can connect you with people in your area and some of those links to the virtual groups. Yes.
Wonderful, thanks. So another one, what are some ways that you can involve siblings or extended family in this practice or in support or advocacy in general?
Yeah, so I think just going to some of the events, if they're in your area, connecting with others, connecting with other families, other siblings that are part of, it's not always about just the person living with CMT. It's about, it affects everyone in their family, the family dynamics, the friendships. So I think it's a great way to connect with people and make those real friendships and relationships just by finding, a local a fundraiser or summit or even online. Like Lily said, some of the Facebook groups are a great way as well.
Great, thank you. So just one more question and then we'll wrap up. How do you go about setting goals when you have a progressive diagnosis that makes it more challenging to kind of set those long-term goals?
So I think you definitely want to have goals, but you also want to be flexible with your goals. So I always like to say, when I set a goal, the goal itself doesn't change, but how I get there can change. For instance, I want to travel the world, right? I want to travel to as many countries as possible. And how I do that may change. So accessibility, who I travel with, the mobility devices that I use while I'm traveling, all of those things might change. Career-wise, you can have goals, but also if those goals are, let's say you have a goal that's very physical, there's still ways to do that, whether that's competitive sports, there's adaptive sports now, or if you have career goals, there are work accommodations, and there's ways to work with your employer or even start to pivot into another career, maybe that is more aligned with your wellness and, some of the limitations that come with CMT. So I always say have more flexibility in how you get there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Estela. That was such a wonderful webinar, and we appreciate your presentation. And this connection with HNF and creating this virtual learning series has been so wonderful and impactful. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And thank you, Lily, for joining us today. Once again, MDA is proud to partner with the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation for this special 2-day event. And if you have not already done so, we encourage you to visit hnf-cure.org for information on CMT, patient resources, ongoing research, and ways to get involved, including all of those great resources that Estela provided for us today in her presentation as well. This year marks MDA's 75th anniversary. This milestone has been made possible by generations of dedicated support from people living with neuromuscular disease, their families, researchers, clinicians, volunteers, and donors who boldly move our mission forward. As we look ahead, we remain committed to honoring this legacy, building on the impact we've made together, and continuing our momentum towards transformative progress for people living with neuromuscular disorders. To learn more, please visit mda75.org. Last but not least, we again invite you to join the MDA community. Joining is free and will help you stay up to date on our programs as well as on the latest research. Please scan the QR code with your smartphone or visit the link in the chat. And we would again like to thank Estela Lugo, Lily Sander, and Mitch Warner for presenting with us today. This will conclude our webinar series, but I do want to remind you that if you want a recording, we will be sending those via email. And it does take about 2 to 3 weeks, but then you'll be able to watch that on our MDA YouTube page. Again, we'd like to hear from you. What did you like about this program? What can we do differently in the future? Please fill out the brief survey that will pop up right after your webinar. Your feedback is important to us and helps us inform future programming. And if you have any questions or looking for support or resources, please contact MDA's Resource Center at 1-833-275-6321 or via email at resourcecenter@mdausa.org. So again, this will conclude today's webinar series. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you found this informative and impactful for your life, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.